Good evening. My name is Mark Ferron, and thanks for inviting me to address your gathering today. Unfortunately, I'm unable to be there physically, but I am there in spirit. What I'd like to do in this message is tell you something about me, to give you my perspectives on energy efficiency more generally, and then to comment briefly on your area of specialty, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. First, a little about my history. I have a rather unconventional resume for a commissioner. I'm a quant by nature and by education, with a background in economics and mathematics. I'm a banker by profession and spent most of my 25-year career overseas. After retiring from banking, I returned to California with my family in 2009. Last summer, I worked for the Brown for Governor campaign and then worked with the governor-elect on financial issues before I was appointed to the Public Utilities Commission about 8 months later. Reflecting my interest in environmental issues and clean tech, I've been assigned the proceedings related to the Renewable Portfolio Standard, Resource Adequacy Planning, and Energy Efficiency. Of course, California has a long and proud history of energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is at the top of the loading order in the state's Energy Action Plan, as well as in statute. It's long been recognized that EE is cheaper and cleaner than all of the other options we have for meeting the energy needs of Californians. As the chart here shows, in the 21st century, the Commission stepped up EE funding significantly. The 2006 to 2008 energy efficiency portfolio was the single largest energy efficiency campaign in U.S. history, with a $2 billion investment by California ratepayers annually. The 2010 to 2012 funding increased by over 40% to $3.1 billion, and low-income energy efficiency programs for the same period added another $1 billion. This is a huge commitment of ratepayer money, which is supposed to generate huge savings in energy. Over the current 3-year cycle, the portfolios are expected to produce cost-effective energy savings of 10,000 gigawatt hours of electricity, nearly 2,000 peak megawatts, and 200 million therms of natural gas, the equivalent of avoiding nearly 4 500 megawatt power plants. But there are several challenges to California's continuing efforts in EE. First, there are significant questions surrounding the ongoing effectiveness of the utilities programs. For 2009, the investor-owned utilities energy efficiency programs had a ratio of 1.47, meaning that for every dollar of ratepayer funds invested in energy efficiency, $1.47 of benefits were received. By some measures, the overall effectiveness of EE has been declining over time. This may reflect the move from harvesting low-lying fruit like light bulbs to more complex and more difficult to assess programs. Measuring energy efficiency savings raises many questions, including the following. How much of the reduction in energy use is merely due to the high cost of energy in California, rather than the efficiency measures themselves? Are energy efficiency programs actually reducing energy costs for customers? How do you account for customers with new, efficient appliances actually using them more? And although California has high energy efficiency building standards, what do we do about the lax enforcement of building standards and improper installation by unskilled or unlicensed contractors when a license is required? For example, in the HVAC sector, less than 10% of HVAC changeouts are done with building permits. So code enforcement is rarely triggered, and ductwork essential to energy savings often is not done to appropriate standards in order to maximize efficiency. The second challenge relates to public funding for EE, which is under threat from a couple of fronts. First, in the mad scramble for funds to address the general fund budget deficit, the legislature authorized the transfer of $155 million from the gas EE budget to the general fund, nearly 20% of the annual EE budget. Additionally, the legislature failed to renew the public goods charge, which provides nearly 25% of annual funding for EE programs. The CPUC is working to backfill the funds from both programs while we wait to see if court action to overturn the legislature's redirection of the gas money is appealed. We hope that we'll be able to continue to collect funding for EE, albeit under a different program, in order to ensure that we maintain continuity for the programs for the immediate future. But clearly, the state budget for EE measures is no longer sacrosanct, and the source for public funding is clearly finite. We need to find ways to leverage these scarce public funds and to use public money to attract private sources of capital in order to finance future EE measures like deep building retrofits. So what are we doing with our energy efficiency programs? Over the last several months, I have been conducting a review of the various programs we run through the utilities and independent contractors. At the moment, we're looking at the EE portfolios for the years after this current funding cycle ends at the end of 2012. I have issued a ruling which makes high-level recommendations for 2013 to 2014 portfolios that would rely less on compact fluorescent light bulbs and appliance recycling and focus more on deep retrofits to our stock of commercial and residential buildings. I want to simplify the suite of EE programs and generate more leverage by emphasizing the private finance of EE measures. And perhaps we should consider increasing the focus on programs which are delivered not by utilities, but by local governments and third parties. We want to make sure that 2013 represents the start of a new focus for EE programs, and HVAC should factor well in these plans as long as we can make progress towards ensuring that it's installed professionally and properly. All parties seem to agree that HVAC upgrades, if executed properly, can garner significant additional energy savings. The Energy Efficiency Strategic Plan, along with the HVAC Action Plan, identify issues that we need to address in order to actually capture the promised savings. Most HVAC systems in residential settings are not installed with permits. This means that often the installation is not done correctly, ductwork is substandard, and assumed energy savings may not actually materialize. I'd like your input on this issue and your help with suggestions on how to achieve the first and second goals of the EE Strategic Plan, namely, 1. By 2015, obtaining HVAC-related permits for 50% of installations, and secondly, by 2020, getting to 100% of systems being installed to quality standards with optimal maintenance. How do you think we should achieve these goals? The action plan is specific on goals and strategies, but we need your input on what the best approaches are and what the barriers are to achieving the goals. Some obvious questions. Should we require program administrators to ensure permits are on file before giving out HVAC subsidies? Are there additional education and training activities that we should fund? Should the California Energy Commission, which under new legislation has authority to enforce codes and standards, focus on this? What else can we do to get to our goals? You know the issues and what works better than anyone else. That's why the HVAC Action Plan involves a component called the Champions Network, a collection of experts in the field who can give real meaning to the words in the strategic plan. You are those experts, and we need your help in designing and implementing programs that work. So in closing, I'm very grateful for your participation and your commitment to energy efficiency around the state. Please be in touch with me or my staff if you have any questions, and especially if you have input on best practices for the CPUC to pursue with regard to HVAC and EE. Thank you, and I hope you have a great conference and have a wonderful evening.